Hello.
I've faced burning buildings that collapsed around me. I've pulled children from car wrecks seconds before explosion. But nothing prepared me for walking into that bedroom and seeing my wife tangled with another man. The room went dead silent. She froze. Then I said 6 words that left everyone stunned and changed my life forever. Now I'm fighting a different kind of fire, one that threatens to consume everything I've built. Trust is like oxygen. You don't think about it until it's gone. Then suddenly, you're suffocating. My name is Mike Callahan. I'm 39 and have been with the Denver Fire Department for 15 years. I've pulled families from burning buildings, rescued kids from raging floods, and run into situations most people run away from. That's the job, and I love every second of it. I met Karen at Mountain Ridge Medical Center after a 3-alarm warehouse fire sent 6 of my crew to the ER. She was the clinic administrator, all business in her blue scrubs, yet with a smile that could make a man forget his own name. We were married within a year. For 8 years, things were solid. I worked my 48-hour shifts while Karen kept the clinic running like a Swiss watch. She was gorgeous at 40, dark hair, curves in all the right places, and a confidence that turned heads. When I wasn't at the station, we'd hit the mountains, ride my Harley, or just kick back on our deck overlooking the Rockies. No kids, something about complications she'd had before we met, but we had a good life. At least I thought we did. Captain Roy Sullivan's retirement party invitation came on Monday. Roy had been my mentor since I joined the department as a rookie. His wife Maria was planning a surprise bash at their lakeside cabin that Saturday. "You better drag that wife of yours along this time," Maria insisted. "Roy misses seeing you two together." She had a point. Karen had missed the last 5 department events. Always a headache, always working late, always some excuse. "We'll be there," I promised, already looking forward to some beers with the crew. That night, Karen was focused on her laptop at our kitchen island when I broke the news. "Roy's retirement party? This Saturday." She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Where?" "Their cabin at Lake Roosevelt. 7 o'clock. It's a surprise." I expected resistance, but instead she nodded. "That could work. I've been wanting to see their place anyway." Seriously? I couldn't hide my surprise. No excuses about work. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly before she smiled. "What can I say? I'm turning over a new leaf." As I grilled steaks on the deck, I found myself wondering when Karen had become such a stranger. Had she always been this distant? When was the last time we really talked? Really laughed together? Saturday arrived with perfect Colorado weather. Karen emerged from our bedroom in a tight blue dress I'd never seen before, looking like she was headed to a cocktail party rather than a firefighter's retirement bash. "New dress?" I asked, adjusting my watch. "Just something I picked up." She grabbed her purse, checking her phone. "Ready." As we drove through the mountains, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Karen kept checking her phone, smiling at texts. "Work stuff," she said when she caught me looking. I just nodded, focusing on the road ahead, completely unaware that in a few hours, my life would go up in flames hotter than any fire I'd ever fought. The Sullivan Lake cabin was lit up like Christmas when we pulled in. Trucks and SUVs lined the gravel driveway. Looked like the whole department had shown up. Karen checked her makeup in the visor mirror one last time. "How do I look?" she asked. "Like the most beautiful woman here," I said honestly. She smiled, but I noticed her eyes scanning the parked vehicles. "Let's not stay too late, okay? I have that presentation Monday." "Sure thing." I squeezed her hand. "One drink, some cake, and we'll bail." The cabin was packed with firefighters and their families. Roy's eyes lit up when he spotted me. "Callahan, you made it." He pulled me into a bear hug, then stepped back to look at Karen. "And you brought your better half." "Been too long, Karen." Karen smiled politely. "Congratulations on your retirement, Roy. 30 years of running into burning buildings is enough for any man," he laughed. "Let me grab you both a drink." As Roy headed to the makeshift bar, I felt Karen tense beside me. "You okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said quickly. "Where's the restroom in this place?" Maria pointed her down a hallway, and Karen disappeared into the crowd. I caught up with my crew, trading stories about our last big warehouse fire. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Karen hadn't returned. "Hey, have you seen my wife?" I asked Johnson, one of my rookies. He shook his head. "No, Chief." I made my way through the party, checking the kitchen, the deck. No sign of Karen. A knot formed in my stomach. Something wasn't right. The hallway to the bedrooms was quieter, away from the party noise. I heard a muffled laugh from behind the door at the end, the master bedroom. Something in that laugh made my blood run cold. I opened the door without knocking and froze. Karen was there, pressed against the wall, her blue dress hiked up her thighs. And Chief Derek Hammond from Station 12 had his hands all over her, his mouth on her neck. They didn't notice me at first. Then Karen's eyes locked with mine over Hammond's shoulder. She froze completely, her lips parting in shock, her hands still tangled in his hair. The room went silent, except for the distant thump of music from the party. "Don't stop on my account," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'd hate to interrupt the real celebration." Hammond spun around, his face draining of color when he saw me. "Mike, Jesus," I cut him off with a raised hand. "Save it, Chief. Didn't realize sleeping with married women was part of your job description." Karen pushed herself away from the wall, tugging her dress down. "Mike, please, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed, a hollow sound that didn't belong to me. "It's exactly what it looks like. My wife cheating with another man at my mentor's retirement party." By now, others had gathered in the hallway behind me, drawn by the commotion. I saw Roy's face among them, his eyes wide with shock. I stared at Karen, this stranger wearing my wife's face, and felt nothing but ice in my veins. "We're done," I said simply, then turned and walked away, the crowd parting silently before me. The steering wheel groaned under my grip as I drove away from Sullivan's cabin. The mountain roads were dark, but I welcomed the challenge of navigating the hairpin turns. It kept my mind focused on something besides the image of my wife in another man's arms. I pulled into a scenic overlook, cut the engine, and stepped out into the cool night air. Below me, Denver's lights glittered like fallen stars. Above, the real stars watched in silence. I'd saved lives under those stars. I'd comforted children while their homes burned. I'd pulled people from mangled cars. But I couldn't save my own marriage. My phone buzzed incessantly. "Karen." I silenced it without looking at her messages. Then Roy called. I answered. "Mike, where are you? Are you okay to drive?" His voice was thick with concern. "I'm fine." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Just needed some air." Hammond left. I damn near threw him out myself. Roy hesitated. "Karen's still here. She's not my problem anymore." I cut him off. "Tell her to call a cab." "Mike." "I mean it, Roy. We're done." I ended the call and turned off my phone. For almost an hour, I stood there on that mountain, letting the cold clear my head. Then I got back in my truck and drove, not home, but to the station. No one questioned why I was there on my day off. One look at my face told them everything. I changed into workout gear and hit the gym. Punching bag, bench press, pull-ups until my muscles screamed. 3 hours later, exhausted and sweating, I showered and crashed in one of the bunks. Lieutenant Ramirez found me there in the morning. "Thought I'd find you here," he said, offering coffee. Words out about Hammond. I took the cup. That didn't take long. Firefighters gossip worse than teenagers. He sat on the adjacent bunk. "What's your next move?" "Divorce papers." I sipped the coffee, welcoming the bitter taste. "I'm not playing games. Want me to go with you to get your stuff?" I shook my head. "I'm not sneaking into my own house. She can face me." By noon, I was pulling into our driveway. Karen's car was there. I'd half expected her to be gone, but that wasn't her style. She wanted to explain, to rewrite history. I found her at the kitchen table, eyes red and swollen. "Mike," she started. "I'm getting some clothes." I cut her off. "I'll be back for the rest later. Please, just listen." I turned to face her, letting her see the coldness in my eyes. "How long?" She flinched. "What? How long have you been sleeping with Hammond?" She looked down. "It's not like that." "How long?" Each word was carved from ice. Karen's shoulders slumped. 6 months. The truth hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't let it show. 6 months of lies. 6 months of betrayal. Was he the first? Or just the latest? Her silence was answer enough. I nodded once, then headed upstairs to pack a bag. 10 minutes later, I left without another word, my wedding ring sitting on the kitchen counter. 3 days after finding Karen with Hammond, I was settled into a studio apartment near the station. The department had rallied around me. Offers of help, places to stay, even a few not-so-subtle offers to accidentally damage Hammond's car. I declined those, but appreciated the sentiment. I spent my downtime hitting the gym and meeting with a divorce attorney. Colorado was a no-fault state, but Karen's infidelity might impact property division. I was ready for whatever battle came next. My phone rang as I was leaving the attorney's office. Johnson, one of my rookies. Chief, he sounded hesitant. There's something you should know. About Hammond. I stepped into a nearby park, sat on a bench. What about him? My girlfriend works at Mountain Ridge Medical. Same place as Karen. He paused. She says Hammond's been coming around for months. Everyone knew he and Karen were, you know. My jaw tightened. Everyone. Pretty much. They, weren't exactly subtle. Chief, I would have told you, but it's fine, Johnson. I kept my voice steady. Thanks for letting me know. After hanging up, I sat there, absorbing this new hit. Not just Karen Hammond, but an entire community of people who knew I was being made a fool of. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You deserve to know the whole truth. Hammond's not the only one. Not by a long shot. Meet me at Cooper's Diner at 7. I stared at the message, suspicion warring with curiosity. It could be a trap, or just someone looking to twist a knife. But I needed to know. At 7 sharp, I walked into Cooper's, a 24-hour joint near the hospital. A blonde woman in scrubs waved me over. I recognized her as one of the ER nurses, though we'd never spoken. Thanks for coming, she said. I'm Rachel. What's this about? I got straight to the point. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Karen's been with at least 3 men from the hospital that I know of. Plus Hammond. It's been going on for years, not months. I opened the envelope. Inside were printed screenshots of texts, social media posts, all showing Karen with different men, dates going back years. Some were taken at hotels, others at parties I hadn't attended. Why are you showing me this? My voice was barely controlled. Rachel's expression softened. Because I've been where you are. My ex-husband worked with Karen 3 years ago. She went after him too. I stared at the evidence, an odd calm settling over me. Does everyone know? Not everyone, Rachel said gently, but enough. I'm sorry. I nodded once, gathering the photos. Don't be. You did me a favor. Driving home, I felt something shift inside me. The last threads of love I'd felt for Karen snapped, replaced by cold resolve. This wasn't just about one night of weakness or a 6-month affair. This was years of calculated deception. Tomorrow, I'd have my lawyer push for a faster divorce. Tonight, I'd pack away the last of my sentimental attachments to a marriage that had clearly been a lie. 2 weeks after the retirement party, I was firmly established in my new reality. The apartment near the station was sparse, but functional. The divorce proceedings were underway. I'd thrown myself into work with a vengeance, volunteering for extra shifts and the most dangerous calls. You're pushing too hard, Captain Martinez warned me after I'd carried 2 kids from a 3rd-story apartment fire without waiting for backup. Being reckless won't fix what happened. I'm doing my job, I replied, checking my oxygen tank for the next entry. No, you're punishing yourself. Take the weekend off. That's an order. I didn't argue. Instead, I drove to the mountains, to a cabin owned by my uncle. No electricity, no cell service, just me, the wilderness, and enough whiskey to numb the pain. But after 2 drinks, I poured the rest down the sink. Drowning myself wouldn't solve anything. I spent the weekend chopping wood, hiking brutal trails, and sleeping under the stars. The physical exhaustion helped quiet my mind. By Sunday evening, I felt hollowed out but cleaner somehow, like a forest after a controlled burn. Heading back into cell range, my phone exploded with notifications. 3 missed calls from Roy, 2 from Karen, and a text from an unknown number. Hammond's been reassigned. Effective immediately. I called Roy back. What happened with Hammond? I asked without preamble. Internal investigation. Roy sounded grim but satisfied. Turns out he's been having relationships with several women connected to the department. Against policy. He's been transferred to administrative duty in another district. Not my concern anymore, I said, though I felt a grim satisfaction. There's more. Roy hesitated. Karen's been trying to reach you. She showed up at the station yesterday, making a scene. What kind of scene? Crying, claiming you're not giving her a chance to explain. Johnson told her where to stick her explanations. I almost smiled. Good man. Mike, Roy's voice softened. I know it's none of my business, but have you considered talking to someone? A professional, I mean. The old me would have scoffed at the suggestion. Firefighters didn't need shrinks. We handled our own problems. But the events of the past weeks had humbled me. Already am, I admitted. Department counselor. Started last week. Good. Roy sounded relieved. This job. We see too much tragedy to carry extra weight. After hanging up, I stared out at the Denver skyline. For the first time since finding Karen with Hammond, I felt something other than rage or numbness, a glimmer of forward momentum. My phone buzzed again. Karen. This time I answered. We need to talk, I said before she could speak. In person. Once. Then we're done. Tomorrow, I'd face her. Tonight, I'd prepare for the final battle. Karen suggested meeting at our house. I refused. Too many memories, too much history. Instead, I chose a coffee shop downtown, public enough to discourage a scene, but quiet enough for privacy. I arrived early, selecting a corner table with a view of the door. Karen walked in 5 minutes late, her confident stride at odds with her nervous expression. She'd lost weight, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. Good. She should lose sleep. Mike. She slid into the seat across from me. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I nodded once. You wanted to talk. So talk. She took a deep breath. First, I want you to know how sorry I am. Save it. I cut her off. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to set terms. Terms. Her eyebrows rose. For our divorce. Clean, quick, fair. You take what's yours. I take what's mine, and we never see each other again. Karen's lips tightened. Just like that. 11 years gone. They were gone the moment you chose to cheat. I kept my voice level. Multiple times, with multiple men, over multiple years. Her face paled. How did you? Does it matter? The point is, I know everything. The affairs, the lies, all of it. I leaned forward slightly. Here's what's going to happen. You'll sign the papers my lawyer sends. You'll take the car and your personal belongings. I keep the house, my pension, and my self-respect. And if I don't agree, I smile without humor. Then I make everything public. Names, dates, photos. The whole department, the hospital. Everyone will know exactly who you are. It wasn't an idle threat. Rachel had provided enough evidence to bury Karen's reputation permanently. You wouldn't dare. But her voice wavered. Try me. Karen stared at me for a long moment. Then her shoulders slumped. I never meant to hurt you, Mike. I nearly laughed. You just accidentally fell in a bed with multiple men over several years. That must have been quite the slip and fall. Our marriage was dead long before I cheated. Her eyes flashed with sudden anger. You were never there. Always at the station. Always putting the job first. Don't. My voice turned to steel. Don't try to justify what you did. If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me. You could have asked for counseling. You could have filed for divorce. Instead, you chose to lie. To cheat. To humiliate me. She flinched at the truth of my words. The papers will arrive tomorrow, I said, standing up. Sign them, and we both move on. Is there nothing left? She asked, a tremor in her voice. Nothing worth saving. I looked down at her. This woman I'd loved, built a life with, trusted completely. Now a stranger. No, I said simply. There's nothing left at all. As I walked away, I felt the weight of the past 11 years lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time, I could see beyond the darkness. The divorce papers arrived at Karen's workplace the day after our coffee shop meeting. My lawyer, Patricia Winters, was ruthlessly efficient, a bulldog in an expensive suit. She'd handled divorces for 3 other firefighters in the department and knew exactly how to protect my assets and pension. She'll either sign quickly or fight dirty. Patricia warned me during our last meeting. Be prepared for both. I was betting on the latter. Karen wasn't the type to surrender gracefully, especially when cornered. Sure enough, 3 days later, I received a call from Patricia. Your wife's lawyer reached out, she said, her voice professionally neutral. They're contesting the terms. Specifically, they want half the house and a portion of your pension. I pinched the bridge of my nose. On what grounds? Support during your career, contribution to the household, the usual arguments. Patricia paused. There's more. They're claiming the evidence of her affairs is inadmissible and irrelevant since Colorado is a no-fault state. Technically, they're right about that. I acknowledged. Technically, yes. But I reminded them that while courts don't care about infidelity, the court of public opinion certainly does. Especially when it involves a high-ranking fire chief, and multiple hospital employees. I smiled grimly. And, and they've requested a meeting. Both parties and both attorneys, tomorrow afternoon. Good. I checked my watch. I'll be there. After hanging up, I received a text from Rachel. Hammond's been officially demoted. Thought you should know. Another piece falling into place. I wasn't vindictive by nature, but seeing consequences for the man who'd helped destroy my marriage provided a certain satisfaction. The next day, I walked into Patricia's office 15 minutes early, dressed in my Class A uniform. If this was going to be a battle, I wore my armor. Karen arrived with her lawyer, a sleek woman in her 50s with calculating eyes. Karen faltered slightly when she saw me in uniform, then quickly composed herself. "Let's get started," Patricia suggested, gesturing to the conference table. Karen's lawyer opened with a rehearsed speech about equitable distribution and Karen's contributions to my career. I listened silently, maintaining eye contact with Karen until she looked away. When her lawyer finished, I slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" Karen asked. "Everything," I said simply. "Every text, every photo, every witness statement. Everything I have on you and Hammond, and Reynolds, and Peterson. All of it." Karen's face drained of color as she flipped through the pages. "This is bullying," her lawyer protested. Patricia smiled thinly. "This is reality. My client is being extraordinarily generous considering the circumstances. He could demand all of this become public record." Karen stared at me, then at the evidence of her betrayal laid bare. She closed the folder with trembling hands. "I'll sign the original papers," she said quietly. Her lawyer started to protest, but Karen silenced her with a look. "It's over. I'm done fighting." As I walked out of the office an hour later, papers signed, I felt no triumph, just relief that this chapter of my life was finally closing. 1 month after the divorce papers were signed, I stood in the empty house Karen and I had shared. The furniture was gone, either sold, divided between us, or donated. All that remained were nail holes in the walls where our photos had hung and the lingering scent of Karen's perfume in the master bedroom. Tomorrow, the real estate agent would list the property. Karen had taken her share of the proceeds in advance and moved to Phoenix. Last I heard, Hammond wasn't with her. Apparently, their relationship hadn't survived the spotlight. "Need any help?" Roy asked from the doorway. He'd driven me over to do a final walkthrough. "Nah," I said, checking that all the lights were off. Nothing left to do. We locked up and headed to my new place, a small but comfortable condo closer to downtown. I purchased it outright with my share from selling the house. No more mortgage, no more shared assets, no more lies. "Place is coming together," Roy commented, noting the sparse but functional furniture. Getting there, I handed him a beer from the fridge. "Still need to hang some pictures." Roy settled onto my new couch. "So, what's next for you?" I paused, considering the question. For months, my focus had been on ending my marriage with my dignity intact. Now, with that chapter closed, I faced an open road. The department offered me the training coordinator position, I said. Teaching the new recruits, developing programs. More regular hours. "You taking it?" I nodded. "Start next month." Time for a change. After Roy left, I sat on my balcony watching the Denver sunset. My phone buzzed with a text from Johnson. "Department softball team, meeting tomorrow. You in, Chief?" I smiled, typing back, "Count me in." Later that evening, I called my sister in Seattle. We hadn't spoken much during the divorce. My choice, not hers. I'd withdrawn from everyone, licking my wounds in private. "Mike," Katie's voice was warm with surprise. "It's so good to hear from you." "Sorry it's been a while," I said, realizing how much I'd missed her. "Don't apologize. I can't imagine what you've been through." She paused. "How are you?" "Really?" I considered the question. "I'm okay. Better than I expected. Actually, we talked for an hour about her kids, my new place, everything except Karen. When I finally mentioned the divorce being finalized, Katie simply said, "Her loss, Mike." Seriously. After hanging up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, a sense of possibility. The betrayal had nearly broken me, but I'd survived. More than survived. I maintained my honor, protected what was mine, and refused to let Karen's actions define me. Tomorrow would bring department paperwork, softball practice, and dinner with the crew. Simple things, normal things. The building blocks of a new life. For the first time since that night at Sullivan's cabin, I felt genuine hope, not just for survival, but for something better waiting around the corner. 6 months after finalizing my divorce, life had fallen into a new rhythm. My position as training coordinator for the department kept me busy during the day, while evenings were filled with softball games, gym sessions, and occasional dinners with the crew. The condo was finally feeling like home. I'd hung photos from climbing trips and fishing expeditions with my buddies, installed new lighting in the kitchen, and even bought plants that weren't plastic. Small victories. Place looks different, Johnson commented during a poker night I hosted for the crew. Less like a hotel room, more like someone actually lives here. I chuckled, dealing another hand. That's the general idea. After everyone left, I cleaned up and checked my phone. A text from Maria Sullivan waited. Annual department barbecue next weekend. Roy says attendance is mandatory for his favorite student. No excuses. I smiled, typing back, wouldn't miss it. The barbecue had been where I'd first met Karen, 11 years ago. Last year, she'd begged off attending, claiming a headache. Now I understood why. She'd probably been with Hammond or one of her other men. The thought no longer cut like a knife. Progress, I supposed. The next morning, I headed to Boulder for a climbing session with David Mercer, another firefighter who'd gone through a divorce 2 years prior. We'd started climbing together during my darkest days post-Karen. Something about hanging from a cliff face forced you to stay present, to focus on survival rather than pain. "How's the dating app treating you?" David asked as we geared up at the base of the route. I grimaced. Deleted it. Too weird. You can't stay single forever, Callahan. He checked my harness with practiced hands. The Karen chapter is closed. Time to start a new one. I didn't respond, focusing instead on our climb. But his words lingered as we scaled the face, finding handholds, testing our strength against the mountain. At the summit, catching our breath with the Colorado landscape spread below us, I finally responded. "I'm not opposed to dating again," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Just not ready to force it." David nodded, understanding in his eyes. Took me 18 months. Everyone has their own timeline. On the drive back to Denver, I found myself thinking about the department barbecue. Last year, attending as a married man in a failing marriage I hadn't even recognized was failing. This year, attending alone but whole. That evening, I was grabbing dinner at a local diner when I noticed a woman sitting alone at the counter, reading a well-worn paperback. Something about her quiet focus drew my attention. When she looked up and caught me watching, I didn't look away. She smiled, a small, curious thing, before returning to her book. I didn't approach her. Wasn't ready for that step yet. But for the first time since Karen, I felt a flicker of genuine interest. Maybe David was right. Maybe it was time to start considering that next chapter. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, when the moment felt right. For now, I had mountains to climb, recruits to train, and a life to rebuild. Not around the hole Karen had left, but into something entirely new. 1 year to the day after discovering Karen's betrayal at Roy's retirement party, I stood in the backyard of the Sullivan Lake cabin for a very different gathering. Roy and Maria were renewing their vows for their 30th anniversary, and the entire department had turned out to celebrate. "Never thought I'd come back here," I admitted to David as we set up chairs for the ceremony. "Full circle," he replied. "That's how healing works sometimes." The day was perfect. Clear blue Colorado sky, mountains reflected in the lake, the cabin decorated with white flowers and twinkling lights. Watching Roy and Maria exchange vows after 30 years together, their love evident in every glance, I felt a bittersweet pang. Not regret for losing Karen, that wound had finally healed, but rather for the honest love I'd thought we had. During the reception, Maria found me nursing a beer on the dock. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, sitting beside me. I smiled, just thinking about how life works out. A year ago, in this very house. And look at you now. She patted my hand. "Roy and I are so proud of how you've handled everything. With dignity. Had my moments, I admitted. Wasn't always dignified. But you never lost yourself. That's what matters." She stood, straightening her dress. "Now come dance with an old lady. It's a celebration, after all." Later, as the party wound down, Johnson approached with a woman I vaguely recognized. "Chief, you remember my sister Rachel?" he said. "She's moving to Denver next month. Thought you might have some neighborhood recommendations." The woman from the diner. The one with the paperback. I smiled, extending my hand. We've sort of met. I'm Mike. Rachel, she replied, her handshake firm. Nice to officially meet you. We talked for 20 minutes about Denver neighborhoods, hikes near the city, and her work as a physical therapist. Easy conversation, no pressure. When she mentioned loving to climb, I found myself offering to show her some local routes. I'd like that, she said, her smile genuine. Driving home that night, I reflected on the year that had passed. I'd gone from happily married to betrayed, from shattered to slowly rebuilding. I protected what mattered, my dignity, my career, my self-respect. I'd learned who my real friends were, and found strength I didn't know I possessed. The condo welcomed me home, clean, organized mind. On the kitchen counter sat the closing documents for the sale of the house Karen and I had shared. The final tie, now severed. I poured a single measure of whiskey and raised it in a silent toast. Not to Karen, not to the past, but to myself. To survival, to growth, to the future, whatever it might hold. Tomorrow would bring a training session with new recruits, lunch with Roy, and maybe a text to Rachel about those climbing routes. Normal things. Good things. The stuff of a life reclaimed. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead forced me to rebuild, stronger than before. Different scar, but whole. And for that, strangely enough, I was grateful.
Bye.